Deep thoughts. Oh my gosh.
It's a mystery to me.
Welcome, guys. Welcome to Deep Thoughts. Oh my gosh. This is very real, very organic. I wanted to say, if you don't know me already, it's Dev Majesty. I've been telling you all I have wanted to start a podcast forever, and I finally have the opportunity to sit down with our very own artist from Deep.DJ,
Hey
Mr.
guys.
Marcus. So basically, yeah, we're gonna kind of run down everything all about Marcus, his life, his inspiration. We're going to hear all the things. So let's go ahead. Marcus, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. So on Instagram, I'm GIMBOOK with a G, and I've been doing art for a long time. I started off with graphite, mostly pencils and things like that, but maybe 6 or so years ago, I got into digital art. Social media following started increasing a little bit. I've done a lot of commission work here and there, and I really enjoy it. Really into artwork.
Awesome. Yes, it is. If you guys haven't seen any of his work, which if you haven't, you're living under a rock, seriously. He has pieces everywhere, like he was mentioning on Instagram. I think at some point you had a Patreon as well, correct?
Yeah, I do have a Patreon. I was trying to upload some tutorials and things like that. I really have ambitions to kind of teach art. So I was testing the waters with that a little bit, just to have some voiceovers, some explanations, some time lapses. Some of them are pretty long, and I'm kind of working on building that up. So hopefully I can pursue that. But yeah, I do have a Patreon. It's true.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so um I think we can just dive right into it. For my first question is early on in your life, how art has had a role early on in your life. If people in your family were into art and you just kind of followed suit, or just kind of how that evolved for you from a young age.
Yeah, I've been doing art for about as long as I can remember. When I was a little kid, I have lots of, well, I don't have them. My mom has lots of drawings that I did. And I was trying to use my imagination. I mean, I had a lot of comics and things that I read. I liked Calvin and Hobbes, so my mind was always on that world building. If you've ever read Calvin and Hobbes, you know how much of an imagination he has. So I was really into comic booking. I wasn't very good at it, and because of that, I wound up putting it off for a while. Then in high school, I was getting back into art again, doing more pencils and studies and trying to understand um, the human body and cars and other mechanical things to add to that. A lot of studies. I wasn't really painting for or drawing for me. I was painting and drawing to understand. So, like, I enjoyed it, but it was mostly a learning process. So it wasn't really. Um, it wasn't much of an emotional thing for me. It was just kind of a very passive hobby that I wasn't especially bent on pursuing. But yeah, the early part of my art life was mostly just trying to understand and interpret the world for myself.
Interesting. That's really cool. Yeah. I think a lot of artists, they usually get into art when they're going through something really traumatic, and it's, their way of having a coping mechanism. But for you, like you said, having it basically as a way for you to just translate things from the world, just taking in everything that we learn from such a young age and all that information that's like given to us from a
Yeah,
young age, just being able to take it in your sense and in a creative way. So that, I think that's really cool.
yeah. It was just trying to teach myself. I never really bothered with art school because I didn't like the idea of having to go at someone else's pace, and I
Right.
wanted to learn something. If I wanted to learn how to draw a mountain, I would only draw mountains for 3 or 4 months. That's just all that I would sketch, and tons and tons of notebooks, just trying to understand them and draw 'em, just lines all over the place, things getting thrown out, angry drawing sessions. But then once I felt I had a grasp on it, then I move on to the next thing. Now we're drawing trees, and I would spend another 4 months or so on that just to understand it. But yeah, you're right. Actually, I had I had a good upbringing or get along with all my family, so I didn't really have to. I didn't need an outlet like that, so it was strictly just to understand. Um, I mean, the emotions started coming later in life actually because I started oil painting, and oil painting is much more personal than just
When did
trying
you
to
start
understand.
that? When did you start doing oil
I
painting?
started oil painting last year. So
Wow.
but in order to do it properly, you really have to be completely present, especially if you're plein air painting. You have your canvas, you have your palette, and all your colors. And when you paint, you take in the information through your eyes, and it kind of goes through the filter of your understanding, and then it comes out the other end. So you have to process it. You can't just say yes, blue. There's much more to it, and you have to allow yourself to feel it. So this was not long before I hopped on for this project, so I was already kind of in that mental space, and I learned how art really can be used as a creative outlet emotionally for your mental health. Um, but up until that point, I had many, many ups and downs. Where I'm like, you know what, I'm not even going to bother. I just would stop drawing because I wasn't learning anything anymore. I just wasn't in the right space for it.
Interesting. Wow, that's super unique. Just the whole approach. Definitely one I haven't heard before. And I think that's really awesome. Just seeing it from a different perspective. Um, Man, so it, you're self-taught. That is amazing, pretty much. Any mentors along the way that you feel like have really made a really strong impression, just on your skill and your talent?
I None of my friends were really super into art. I think maybe 6 or 7 years ago, a friend of mine got married to an artist, and she was very good. And she was painting with her feelings, and she had things that she was coping with, and she found ways to express herself. And I always thought that was really inspiring because I was kind of striving for perfection just to understand and do it the right way, but everybody else is just having a good time, and they're painting with their feelings, and they're expressing themselves, and I'm stuck in this loop. And I was starting to learn. I didn't have any real mentors per se, but I did have friends that I was looking up to because creatively they were doing things in a way that was, I guess you could say, was not satisfying, but
Inspiring to you. I mean,
yeah, inspiring. And it was a rewarding process because at the end of the day, no matter what the art winds up being, this is how you felt today. And that's something that I didn't really have, and then I started tapping into. But I did actually have a friend of mine when I started oil painting. He's the one that actually taught me how to. I had a lesson with him. Well, I had 3 lessons with him, and he taught me how to feel a little bit more. And it's made an enormous, huge, huge difference since then. And I've been painting more than I ever have because of that. You just
that's
remove the
amazing.
you remove the pressure. It's just
Right.
this is how you feel.
Having a good mentor, I think, is definitely something I feel like is important to have, not just artistically, but maybe just in life. I think that's
I
really
agree.
important. Um, wow, so that's amazing. Um, what would you say is kind of your process, when you are doing these oil paintings? Because you're talking about it, having a lot of being very emotional. What would you say is your process? How do you get into the right mind space to put yourself into that, uh just getting into it, you know what I'm saying, like getting into that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
space?
Yeah, it winds up being kind of a process. When we did those lessons, they were outside on summer days, and we had the easel up. We had all of our colors out, and you pick a spot. But then I would just try to take it in. You have to clear your mind and just take it in, because it's easy to allow your preconceptions to sneak their way into the way that you're thinking. Because you can look at a tree and you say the tree is brown, but the tree's not really brown because the tree reflects the light that's reflected from the sun that goes down on the grass. You have bits of the sky that sneaks in. You have a certain amount of in Photoshop, it's like color dodge, but the way that the actual sun rays influence the warmth of an object. So it goes from being brown to being more of a red. So taking maybe 10 or 15 minutes just to absorb everything and to really see what you're looking at. It's not just the thing, it's everything around it also, and that's what makes it feel like it's all one thing. And I remember the first oil painting that I did, I had to sit there for a while because I didn't know where to start. I'm like, do I just start putting color on? Do I just start
Mhm.
whatever? So I started someplace that I was familiar with. I had graphite, I had a pencil, and I drew what I saw. That was the first thing I did. And then after that, I went in with some brown because that was the most obvious thing that I saw. And I did some shadows and kind of started laying it out. And then I went to my mentor. I asked him, I said, okay, so I'd like to start here, but what do you think? And he was like, well, why don't you start with this? Start nice and thin, do some thin layers, and then start building on it. Start building on it because he was mentioning how with digital art, it's easy because you just pick a color and you run with it. For oil, you have to mix it. You have to take, okay, this looks, it's like
It's a
somewhere
more
between the,
involved process.
absolutely, and it makes a mess, and you have to play with different media, and you have to thin it out, thicken it up. So yeah, it's about patience, and it winds up paying off because you can actually. I think I have my painting over here. Let me show you.
Yeah, that's super cool. So do you have like a little gallery of some sort set up somewhere in your house of all your
I
pieces?
Yeah, my wife actually she put a bunch of my oil paintings up on the wall over here. You can't see it, but they're like right over that way. So
That's
this
so
was where we were. It was at a park in Connecticut, and it was nice and warm. And I was starting to realize that there was no real brown anywhere. I wanted to paint a tree, but after a couple minutes, all I was seeing was blue, green, red, um, tiny hints of brown in like the shadows. But I mean, it was mostly all these other colors that I hadn't really considered. But this was, I already treated, but this is the first one that I did.
Oh
Let's
wow,
see.
that's beautiful. Yeah, you can
And
you can
it,
see the depth.
yeah, it's highly textured, and he was pointing me in different directions. So that actually opened my eyes because now with digital art, I think of it a little more abstractly, where it doesn't have to be as precise. For anybody who's seen any of the art that I've done recently, as opposed to a couple of years ago, it's taken a little bit more of a painterly turn, where it's a lot more fast and loose. It's a little more emotional. There's a little more movement, and it really is paying off. But it winds up really being about how I feel instead of just a study. It's, oh, this is a picture of a hand. I drew a hand today. It's a little more broad than that.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So, it seems like it's a lot more relaxed too, having that
Hmm.
specific style, which probably is a bit more conducive to having a really creative mindset, I guess, when you don't feel nervous that, oh, I'm gonna mess it up. Or maybe that
Yeah.
if that, I don't know if that goes through your mind as an artist. I know that sounds like, weird. I'm not, I do some art, but I'm not an artist, on nearly on your level. But uh, I would think that, that eases your mind a bit, knowing
Yeah.
that you have some wiggle room to make little errors, little mistakes, and be okay with it. And it
Well, and
not.
another thing, something else that kind of played into it is that I would do commission work. I would do sketches of family members, of friends, or for gift and things like that. And I would put this pressure on myself, but I was reminded that if I get hired to do a piece of artwork, it's because they want me to do it. So uh, the pressure to make it perfect to whatever standard I think they might want to see is completely arbitrary because they came to me because they already like my stuff, even if I don't like it. That's how they like it. So it takes a lot of that pressure off because now I can create freely and just enjoy the process. I don't have to nitpick. I mean, some of the world's best artists were impressionists. So, and I know how that makes you feel. And that's the thing, it captures the feeling, not the minute details. There's artwork where you can get into minute detail, but I'm not going for photorealism, you know?
Right, right,
That I don't have the mind for that. And that's
right.
okay. So you just let it go.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Something else I wanted to mention. I didn't even get to mention it, but where you're from. I didn't even say you have to tell the people where you're from. You don't have to tell
East
them your
Coast, Beast Coast.
address. Don't tell them your address, but state wise, where you're at on the East Coast, and if where you live has had any inspiration in terms of your art when you're doing art.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm actually from Connecticut, and we get all the seasons up here, and I'm kind of a winter guy, so a lot of my artwork kind of steers towards winter. That's just this is I enjoy the scenery. I enjoy
I
going up
noticed
north.
that a
Yeah,
lot of
I
pieces you
like.
have.
Yeah, it's not an accident. I just like snow, and I like how I like the idea of kind of creating environments and feelings and things like that. So I would say that on cold days when I'm outside and I feel cold, I like to be able to portray that in my artwork. You don't get that down south. But if it's hot, we have these really hot days. I like to portray that, you look at it and you might start to feel a little hot yourself. So
Hmm.
trying to communicate that is definitely influenced by my environment. And I would say we have the autumn up here. I've done a few paintings based off of that. And I guess now that I think about it, I mean, it's kind of unique to our area. Not everybody has that range of seasons. So my
Mm-mm.
artwork winds up
We don't.
following the seasons. No, you guys don't. That's
We
that's for sure.
definitely
It's
don't.
either hot or less hot.
Right, right. And then just occasionally during the winter, we'll have like one random day where it's like 30 degrees, and you're like, what? What is
Yeah,
this?
you don't even have a sweater.
Right. Wow. So, okay. Yeah, definitely. Now that I think about it, you do have tons of pieces that have snow. So I think it's really cool to know that a lot of that inspiration comes from your surroundings and just something you enjoy. So that's really cool. Um, in terms of your favorite type of art, I know we talked about oil paintings in terms of your favorite mediums and different things like that. Uh, would you say that oil paintings are your current favorite?
I would say, yeah. I think that it's definitely the most involved and it's the most difficult, but it's by far the most rewarding. But because of that, I don't do it anywhere near as often as everything else. I mean, I have to have like a half hour to warm up to it and then a whole half hour to kind of come down from it. So I wind up not doing it anywhere near as often as I wish I could. But it's definitely my favorite way of doing art right now. I haven't really done pencil sketches in a couple months even. They used to be all that I did, but now it's if it's not digital painting, I'm going to the oil. I just really really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's such an experience every single time. Put on some music, get in the right headspace. It's good.
Yeah, no, I love that. I will never forget some of the team tuned in to watch you do a piece, and you get into this mode, and it's so cool. Like it's like super focused. You're picturing the scene, and we can't help just be quiet and just be thankful that we're able to even experience being in uh basically an artist's intimate space. That's your intimate space. So being a part of that process and seeing it kind of just come to fruition and turn into something, it starts with a bunch of scribbles, and then before you know it, it turns into this amazing piece. So um
Appreciate that.
being able to witness that, I think, was definitely something new and something interesting. um so a kind of a change of pace. We've learned a little bit about your beginnings as an artist. Do you feel like there are any events that you feel like were very um influential, or maybe changed your style of art, or just anything significant that may have affected you creatively?
Yeah, so in downtown New Haven, we have the British Art Museum, and I would go there a lot as a kid, and I always liked the Renaissance era type paintings. I am partial towards Rembrandt, so anything from that sort of time period, I liked how things could seem really detailed, but when you look, they're not really. They're just globs of paint in different areas, but it implies detail. And
Hmm.
I learned a lot from that. It was very, very inspiring because the closer that I got to these older pieces of art, the more that I was able to pick them apart and realize how unimportant little tiny things are, but how it can still make an impression if you put the right line in the right place. So I would spend a lot of time in places like that, or go to sometimes there were these little pop-up galleries on the green, things along those lines. I liked seeing others' oil paintings. I was just never brave enough to do it myself, so try to pick what I could from it and learn a little bit. And then Instagram came around, and I haven't
Game
actually.
changer.
Yeah, game changer because now you can start saving stuff. You start talking to other people. You start getting ideas. Uh, and I would say that my style now is absolutely just a combination of everything that I've liked up until this point. I just pick what I like. I'm like, I like this little the way they do this, but I don't like how they do that. So I pick that from someone else. Um, but absolutely, going to museums as a kid, huge, huge influence.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I wish they had a lot of those where I grew up, but they didn't. But in the tri-state area, I feel like there's a lot of different events and artistic things that you can attend and be inspired. So that's really, really cool. Um, Kind of segueing into, you're talking about Rembrandt. I know you've mentioned before that that's one of your inspirations. Do you have any others that you feel like heavily inspire your art style or have inspired to a degree some of your art style?
Um, a lot of my inspiration comes from Pinterest, so I might be looking for an idea and I'll find a lot of things in the same category, but no one particular artist. There's a couple of specific ones on Instagram that I'm really, really into that uh, have some awesome techniques and they have tutorials and things on how they do what they do. But I don't really wind up finding myself looking to anybody else specifically. And even Rembrandt winds up coming up specifically because I was learning how to do portraits, and portraiture is kind of like where I'm the safest. That's what I wind up doing the most. And I looked to him. I just wound up being completely infatuated in the way that he would do faces.
Right.
But
No.
beyond that, it winds up being just whatever I happen to see. I might be scrolling, I might be in the museum, and I'll take a picture of stuff. I don't always wind up picking up on specific names. I just have these huge galleries on my hard drive, just tons and tons of inspiration pictures from different artists all around the world, because there's always something to be drawn from that. Um, and I mean, you can only really do that today. That wasn't
That's
possible
true.
20 years ago. Not like that. Not the way that it is now. But I hope to be able to travel a little bit more and to see some other museums around the world so that I can pick up some more inspiration because there's nothing like seeing it in person and understanding all of the textures, not just something from a picture. But I mean, that's what I wind up having to say in that because it just my inspiration comes from everything. It comes from absolutely everything. It's hard to pinpoint it.
Cool. Yeah, well said. I was gonna say, in terms of stepping into this foreign space, this NFT space, um, I'll never forget you had mentioned prior to stepping into this space, you were debating if you even wanted to continue doing art. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Before I say that, there was one other artist that I do like specifically, John William Godward. He's an artist from the 30s, I think. I just happen to really like the way that he paints. Really, really good. But
Hmm.
yeah, so last year was tough because I started with oil painting and I really, really enjoyed it. But it's very taxing, painting with your feelings like that. And I didn't really see much of a reason to continue doing digital art except for maybe commissions. So I was kind of it wound up getting put on the sidelines. I was doing it, but I was doing it out of principle because I had my Instagram and I had my following, and I was just trying to. It wound up becoming more about content than about actual things. And every once in a while, I'll come out with something. I'm like, actually, I'm really proud of this one. But for the most part, it was just about creating stuff. It was just making it, and I wasn't always happy with it. So I was like, well, I think it might be time to take a break. But then I got pulled onto the project, and I was like, Well, it was
We
cool
were
because the
very
inspiration
convincing.
the the inspiration started coming from someplace other than me. So somebody said, "Hey, I have an idea." To me, it felt like at first almost like a commission. Somebody says, "We want to do this," and I'm like, "Okay, well, let's open up a dialogue. Let's see what we can figure out, and then we'll do a couple sketches." They were happy, and then we'll do a couple more ideas, and people were still happy, and then do a little bit more. So it felt like little mini commissions, which I always enjoy. And then it sort of ballooned from that. And before I knew it, I mean, I was drawing 3 or 4 things a day just to keep the project going. And I was enjoying it because I had mostly creative freedom to do almost anything that I had. I mean, there were some ideas I would put forward, but I could just say, it'd be cool. What if we did this? And then we put it out. And then everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. Like, we're going to keep that. Or sometimes things just didn't work and we wound up not using them.
Right.
But I was on the verge of just kind of throwing the towel into social media. The Patreon wasn't doing super well at the time. Um, I didn't see much of a reason to do it other than principle. I should be doing art, so let me do art.
In principle, I should be showing people how to do what I'm doing because it's something a lot of people want to learn.
Yeah, it wound up becoming more about that, and I was like, it's not for me anymore. I wasn't doing it for me, so I was going to stick to just doing oil painting every once in a while.
Right.
But yeah, now I'm doing more art than I ever have.
That's amazing. Just seeing the progression. How have you enjoyed being an artist specifically within the Solana space? Because Solana is quite young. How do you feel, just with the reception of so many people just receiving your art so well, even people getting your art tattooed
Yeah, I
on
know.
them? How
That's crazy.
surreal does that feel to you? I mean, that's like
Well,
mind-boggling.
it's very cool and it is very surreal. That's a good word for it because normally my art wouldn't go anywhere unless I put it there, you know? So to put things out, it's very easy to take an artist for granted because a lot of times you see with other projects, right? Uh, any project at all, even like for big companies, an artist had to make, and the artist is not usually involved in that part of the conversation. They're hired, and then that's pretty much it. So
Right.
to see it live, and the fact that I can use my different styles to cover different parts of the project, if I put something out, then somebody else might tweet it, and then somebody else might put it on Instagram, and then somebody else is going to create a post about it. And then when we made the white paper, I mean, I really appreciate that you put all the effort into it, but you had to get some of those other pictures from the archives from our project,
Right.
from earlier stuff, and putting them in. So to
Mm-hmm.
see that I have this miniature portfolio for this project
The white
of
paper
art.
is a portfolio, basically.
Exactly. Every single piece of art in there is by me. So
Mm-hmm.
to see that I have just basically a folder of drawings that were made for this kind of just one-offs. All right, we got this one thing, we'll do the drawing. But then to see all these things resurface one by one and be put on blast and they're retweeted all over the place, I get to see that and I get to still be a part of the conversation. So I really, really appreciate that. That that it's going as far as it is. Um, I've never seen it in so many different places at the same time, and that others are just taking it and running with it.
Right. I mean, it's all over Twitter. You have your artwork is all over Twitter. And
Yeah.
I just feel like it would be such a surreal feeling as an artist. Not that you do art to seek validation or that you're artistic for validation, but sometimes when you get that validation, you're like, holy crap, this feels really good. Like somebody loves my art. People, thousands or
Yeah.
over 2,000 people love my art. And I just feel like that would be just such an amazing feeling as an artist to just
It's
have that
humbling, that's for sure.
affirmation.
It's humbling because, it's I owe every other friend, every other person, mentor, every bit of inspiration. It's not just me. It's every single experience that I've had up until this point contributed to even just the style of the art that we did. Every single thing that I've learned up until this point, I just dump it all into this project, and I'm proud of the fact that everybody's receiving it so well. But I can definitely acknowledge that it's not just. I mean, it's every single person that put effort into it, because without these other awesome ideas that we had, and without the help that I've had up until this point, I probably would have stopped a long time ago.
That's amazing. You're so humble. Stay that way. No, I think I love the story. I love hearing the story. Of course I've heard it, but being able to now we can officially share it with people who don't know about your story, and your progression from early on up to now being all over Twitter, and just people having your artwork as their digital identity. Basically, that's what PFPs really are, going into this
Yeah,
new realm of metaverse and web3. Is our PFPs are essentially our digital identity, and the fact that your art is what people want to be associated with is amazing. I'm super happy for you. And honestly, I was going to ask, and kind of segueing, what would you feel? Because obviously, a lot of people know you've accomplished so much, within the company and the project with Deep.DJ. What is next for you? What aspirations do you have any goals specifically that you want to accomplish, this year, and maybe some long term?
I would say probably for this year, as far as art goes, I'm definitely going to come out with my own gallery. I don't know what
A one of one
website I'm. Yeah,
collection,
yeah. I'm gonna
exchange
have to.
art,
I think I'm gonna
something.
wind up taking that. We were talking about that the other day, and I think that I'm gonna wind up taking that route. I just need to be able to find the time for it, because I have so many pieces that I am proud of, and there's no reason why I wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, I'm just hoarding it for myself, but like.
Got to share it with the world. That's amazing.
So you just make the effort. So I think short term for sure, I want to get a gallery online. Long term would really be to try to, even part time. I'd like to work to some capacity professionally doing digital art. um, and I say to some capacity because I know that there are certain limitations, and there winds up being, like, do I want to do it full time? Maybe not. But
You might not even
there's
need to. If you get
maybe
you
not.
have like a couple good auctions a month, you won't even need to do it full time.
I mean, that would be ideal for sure, but it's like, you got the long view and you got the short view, and then trying to do one thing at a time.
Right.
And I really do feel like that if there was an opportunity to do something, 'cause I would consider that part time. I mean, the thing is that you make the art and then you put it up, and it takes time to manage a website and to manage the auctions and
Right.
things like that. But being able to do art as a sustainable means of income is definitely something that I hope to do for a long time, because I enjoy it. That's where my heart is, and I'm painting with my feelings now, so it means something.
It absolutely does. Yeah, and actually I kind of wanted to, speaking of feelings, our project, of course, we all constantly um try to bring light to mental health awareness. And it's something we, at all points, some of us have, or all of us, not even some of us, all of us have dealt with, struggled with, cope with, whether it be in past, currently, um, art and being creative in any way, I feel like is a really amazing way to just help you get through things, help you translate your feelings onto a canvas, into music, whatever your outlet is. If you had to give uh, something you would, I don't know if it's something you would recommend or suggest, or just advice to people that may be having a hard time going through something. Maybe they're an artist, an aspiring artist, and they feel like their art isn't quote unquote good enough to be recognized or appreciated. What kind of advice would you give them based on your experience as an artist?
I would say anybody who has any kind of creative outlet already has a head start on most people, because I think for me, a more emotional thing before this, really, in the meantime, I play guitar too, and that actually, I'm not the best guitarist, but I don't care. I really don't care. With art, I was very passionate about, oh, it's got to be right, it's got to be perfect. That's what I was saying before. But with guitar, uh, I'm not the best guitarist, and I don't care. I was just playing because I enjoyed it and I like music, and it made me feel better. So
Absolutely.
if you have, it's okay to have a hobby or two, but you do it for you first, and you pick something that you feel like you can do for you, that you don't care about what other people think or say about how you're doing it. It doesn't mean there won't be frustrating times, but you do it for you first. If you want to learn how to play a couple songs and that's all you want to do on an instrument, then that's all you have to do. You're not obligated to do anything beyond that. If there's one or two songs that make you feel, I mean, you're honestly, you're better off being able to do one thing, pretty good, and as long as you enjoy it. That's when you stop enjoying it altogether, then it may be a good time to pick something else because now it's no longer contributing in a positive way to your mental health, to say
Amen
the
to
least.
that.
Yeah. So
I think
yeah,
that was
I mean, if you have
amazing.
any kind of creative outlet, anything at all, you're making sandcastles, like whatever. Not everything has to be for social media. Some things you just keep to yourself. You just
Love
keep it to
that.
yourself.
Love that. Amen to that. Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. I think that's amazing advice. Um wow, that was an amazing session. We covered so much, I feel like, in such a short amount of time. Thank you for sharing all your stories, your inspiration. Um putting a little advice out there for anybody struggling or an aspiring artist. I think that was amazing as well. um for final remarks, I just wanted to give you the floor if there's anything you want to say to your fans, because you have fans now.
Yeah, I know. Let me start off by saying I am humbled. I try to be active in the Discord and to acknowledge stuff. It's nice because we have some guys who are in there every single day, managing it and talking to everybody, and it's nice to be able to come in and to get that love. I I love doing artwork. I love making new stuff. I love hearing everybody's ideas. I love being able to see some of those through to fruition. And I'm gonna keep doing it. For this project, for other projects, for myself. I'm gonna keep making art whether people like it or not. So that's
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for coming on Deep Thoughts. This is our first episode. I had such a great time. I love talking and just sitting here chatting just about everything under the sun and
yeah, super fun.
how Marcus ticks. It was amazing. And I think a lot of people I can't wait for them to hear your stories as well. Um, yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody. This is our first, or I guess our pilot episode. Of course, I absolutely had to interview Marcus. I can't even say he belongs to us. He doesn't belong to us. He's his own person. But I always say it subconsciously. I'm like, Marcus is our artist. He's not. Marcus is Marcus, and he's a phenomenal artist. And definitely, I definitely can't wait for you to have your own storefront in addition to the work you do for Deep Thought DJ. But I think a lot of people are going to look forward to that as well. So we will all be patiently awaiting. And
Hmm.
yeah, definitely make sure you guys follow Marcus on all his social platforms. We will have them linked on whatever platform we end up posting this to. I think it's going to be uploaded to YouTube, but you
Cool.
know, on Twitter, Discord, follow him everywhere. Please support his art, his journey. He's going to continue to make amazing things within Solana and just in life in general. So please follow his journey. And just a huge thank you for joining us on Deep Thoughts. And we will see you guys on the next one. Take care.
We'll see you.